Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there today. We're talking about a few coaches here in the NFL that already done got fired in 2022. They wasted no time once the regular season ended. Some nice, young, talented teams out there are going to be looking for some new head coaches in this show here today. I'm going to be talking about a few of those coaches that did get fired, some potential candidates, and maybe even some predictions here on where we think some pieces may fall the further we get into the offseason here in 2022. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing if you're looking for all things NFL football all year long. But we're not going to waste any time. Let's go ahead and get into the first coach here. Let's talk about Vic Fangio of formerly the Denver Broncos. And poor Vic could just never get anything going in Denver despite having a lot of great young talent there on that team. He spent 3 seasons in Denver. However, he never finished above 500 on any given season with an overall record of 19 wins and 30 losses and no playoff appearances. Just this past season, finished 2021 19th overall on offense, but 8th overall on defense. And that's kind of what we knew and what to expect from Vic Fangio. Anyway, when he took over this team coming from Chicago, knew he was a defensive-minded coach. That showed in Denver. The problem is the offense just never improved. They never made adjustments, despite having the likes of Jerry Jeudy and the young rookie running back Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton in the mix, Noah Fant. They just could never get anything going, and a lot of that had to do with bad quarterback play and the fact that it took 3 years and still had no plan for the future. They figured it was time to go, so Vic Fangio out of Denver. What about Brian Flores in Miami, though? And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Flores was a name that we talk about a lot this offseason that could potentially fill some of these other roles around the NFL. Only spent 3 seasons in Miami, but honestly, the biggest issue here was between him and upper management, but I kind of criticized him at times this year. It seemed like he was trying to get too cute. We didn't really like the drama surrounding Tua Tagovailoa and Deshaun Watson. A lot of issues there back and forth. The locker room had question marks at times throughout the season, but he did have back-to-back winning seasons. Finished these 3 years with a record of 24 wins and 25 losses. However, no playoff appearances. This season finished 25th overall in offense and 15th overall in defense. I think we could all agree that the Miami defense for the majority of the season took a step back here this year, and they just decided to part ways. But like I said, do not be surprised if he's a name that we hear a lot about here in the coming weeks and coming months. Next up, what about Matt Nagy? No longer with the Chicago Bears. And honestly, right now, you can't see it, but I'm smiling. Wait, let's just do this for a second. Yes, I'm totally happy that Matt Nagy is no longer in Chicago. I have been off this bandwagon since basically his first year there with the Bears. He spent 4 seasons in Chicago, only had 1 winning season, and it was his first year there. 1 playoff appearance, which was his first year there. And then just this past season, finished 24th overall in offense. However, their defense in Chicago still not bad. 6th overall in defense. The problem with Matt Nagy is there was no identity to this offense. They couldn't get things going. Justin Fields was somewhat hit or miss. It didn't really, do him any favors to start this season here. They didn't really, force the development upon him. So he kind of regressed slightly. Started to come on a little bit later half of the season when he was actually given an opportunity. But Matt Nagy is definitely somebody who was hindering the upsides of a lot of players on this roster. So honestly, this one doesn't hurt my feelings. Too bad it won't surprise me if he doesn't catch on somewhere else. Not as a head coach, but I could see him as an assistant somewhere else in the league. Lastly here, Mike Zimmer. This was somewhat of a surprise, I guess you could say. Mike Zimmer has found some success in Minnesota. He spent the last 8 seasons there. 4 of those seasons were winning seasons. His overall record as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, 72 wins, 56 losses, and 1 tie. Made the playoffs 3 years, 2015, 2017, and 2019. Last year, finished 12th overall on offense, but where they really struggled was on defense. Now, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, and they finished 30th overall, right there, bottom of the barrel in defense. But Mike Zimmer, another one of these guys who, in my opinion, isn't a bad coach. Is he somebody that's going to take your organization to the next level? No, he kind of takes on the identity of his quarterback the last few years in Kirk Cousins. He's safe. He's reliable. He's solid. He's not going to be one of those guys that's going to just, take your team to the next level. But when it comes to an overall head coaching position, Mike Zimmer is not that bad of a head coach. I think it was just that time that the tenure had come to an end. They realized that they weren't going to go any further. A lot of question marks surrounding the franchise going forward and who their quarterback could be. So Mike Zimmer no longer in Minnesota. But we also know there's two other teams out there that could potentially be looking for a head coach in 2022. Don't forget the Jacksonville Jaguars. They fired Urban Meyer back in December, and now they've had interim coach Darrell Bevell. He'll be somebody who interviews for the job, but is that the direction they go? They may find a little bit more bang for their buck with a few of the other options that we'll discuss here in just a little bit. And then lastly, the Raiders. Don't forget about the Raiders, the playoff Las Vegas Raiders. They let go of John Gruden back in October. Interim coach Rich Bisaccia is definitely somebody who's taken over that locker room. The players love themselves some Rich Bisaccia. Is he going to keep that job? Well, making it to the playoffs, and if they can win a playoff game, is definitely going to help his chances. I will say that. But outside of that, I can see Las Vegas trying to go out and make a little bit more of a flashy hire, which is something we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But these are two other teams that we just don't want to forget about just yet. But now that we've covered some of the potential landing spots for some new coaches, how about some of the potential candidates? And here's a short list of a few names that we're looking at here this offseason. Obviously, this slide could be like 60 names long, but these are the guys that I'm focusing on here to begin with. First name up, Eric Bieniemy. Is this really a shock? No, he's one of the bigger names every offseason, yet every single year seems to go back to the offensive coordinator position there in Kansas City. Is this the year that he finds that big opportunity with another up-and-coming team? Joe Lombardi, yes, in case you're wondering, he's related to Vince. However, he's the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers, another one of these young coaches that could get a shot to try to catch that lightning in a bottle that we've seen in the past with Sean McVay and Cliff Kingsbury. That's what they're trying to find is the new young up-and-coming head coaches. He could be one. Byron Leftwich, he's been under Bruce Arians here for a while, not only in Arizona, but now in Tampa Bay. Currently their offensive coordinator. Brian Daboll out of Buffalo, their offensive coordinator, really helped develop Josh Allen. Matt Eberflus, and maybe I mispronounced his last name, he's the defensive coordinator there in Indianapolis, a really solid defense there. Could he get an opportunity? In my opinion, he may be a little bit lower down this list as far as potential candidates and the opportunities that he sees. Patrick Graham, same with him, coming out of the Giants, their defensive coordinator. The problem with him is he's coming from the New York Giants, who really just were a dumpster fire this past year, so I don't know if he really gets that opportunity. Kevin O'Connell, the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, for whatever reason, everybody in the NFL wants a young coach from the Sean McVay coaching tree. That's Kevin O'Connell. Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, really helped develop Lamar Jackson. Kellen Moore, another young offensive coordinator there in Dallas. He called the plays, a very balanced offense. Going to see a lot of interest here this offseason. Bill O'Brien, he's out of the NFL. Currently now the offensive coordinator of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I don't think it would break their hearts if he were to leave. He's definitely somebody with some experience that can get some opportunities. Todd Bowles, we've seen him all over the place in New York and Arizona. Currently the defensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. We know he has some experience, not a lot of winning experience though. Jim Harbaugh is a name that keeps popping up for all of these jobs. He's currently the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Does he return to the NFL? Dan Quinn, currently the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, another one of these guys that has some Super Bowl experience on his resume that some teams could really like. Same going for Doug Peterson. A lot of people couldn't stand Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, but now all of a sudden, due to that experience that he has on his resume, could really be looked at by some of these younger teams to bring in some of that experience into the locker room. Now, not a lot of interviews scheduled as of yet, but the season just ended like a day ago. So don't be surprised if in the coming days, the coming weeks, we start to hear a lot more about these coaching interviews, and we'll make sure we keep you up to date. But at the time of this recording right now, this is what we're looking at. Matt Eberflus of Indianapolis currently has an interview scheduled with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn of the Dallas Cowboys, they're scheduled to meet with the Denver Broncos. And also Bill O'Brien, he's currently got an interview scheduled with the Jacksonville Jaguars, another name that's really popped up a lot there in Jacksonville. But like I said, a lot of these guys still have something to play for, right? Their season either just ended and they were in the thick of things, or they're getting ready to head into the playoffs. I mean, just look at the names on this list that are currently going to the playoffs. Eric Bieniemy, Byron Leftwich, Brian Dabble, Kevin O'Connell, Kellen Moore, Todd Bowles, Dan Quinn, they're all right now heading into the playoffs. Joe Lombardi was just fighting for a playoff spot. Matt Eberflus was just fighting for a playoff spot. There's Greg Roman, a guy in Baltimore. A lot of these guys are obviously coming from pretty good situations. That's why their names are coming up here this offseason. But until they really get through this playoff push, I don't expect a lot of these guys to get some interviews here for a couple weeks. Now, everybody always wants predictions. So this is what we're going to do. This is super early, and this could go so many different ways, and there's so many moving parts and pieces with general manager hires. It's almost impossible to nail just yet, but a lot of people want predictions, and they can be fun. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave this graphic up here for just a second. You can see the current teams that are looking for an NFL head coach potentially. Leave your comments down below. Which one of these names, or maybe somebody who's not listed, where do you think they fall? Fill out this list and put it down below in the comment section. So I'll give you a second here to do that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and flash up my very, very early predictions. And I'll give a brief explanation as to why I put them at each spot. So here we go. For the Minnesota Vikings, I went with Kellen Moore, a nice young offensive coordinator, great at calling plays, a very balanced offense between the run and the passing game, which works out great with the likes of Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. Want to make sure we have an offense built around them where they both see huge volume. Kellen Moore could do that. Miami, Doug Peterson. Now, I don't love Doug Peterson, but way back in the day, he played for the Miami Dolphins, and they're looking for somebody with some experience. A lot of young talent on this team, especially with the quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. You got Jalen Waddle. You have a mess at the running game. If this is the case where Doug Peterson goes there, I wouldn't expect the running game to be much clearer. However, he is somebody with some experience, with some ties to Miami. For Denver, I went ahead and put in Eric Bieniemy. Now, how crazy would it be if he stays in the division? He knows the AFC West pretty well, and when you look at this offense, something he's known for, a high-powered offense, if they can solve the issue at quarterback, they're looking at some great opportunities here with the likes of Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, the young running back in the backfield with Javonte Williams. Do they bring back Melvin Gordon? There's a lot of other question marks in this offense, but there's plenty of offensive weapons. What if they could lure, one of these bigger names? What if Russell Wilson is on the trade block? What if there's a lot of things that happen here over the offseason and Denver can make a run? They could be looking at a great opportunity. I think Eric Bieniemy has a shot to go to Denver. For the Raiders, right now, I left Rich Bisaccia there. I think he's earned the opportunity to stay on this team, being that they made the playoffs. The locker room absolutely loves him, and as of right now, in my opinion, it's his job to lose. If it's not him, there's a lot of rumors surrounding him and Jim Harbaugh of the Michigan Wolverines, and Jim Harbaugh coming back, kind of being that splashy big name hire to really kind of headline the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's a name to watch. For Jacksonville, I put Byron Leftwich. Does this just not make sense? I mean, Byron Leftwich played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's had plenty of experience here over the last few years under head coach Bruce Arians, and it's time for him to get that opportunity. For me, Jacksonville just makes too much sense, especially when it comes to quarterback play. A former quarterback there to help develop Trevor Lawrence, I think, would be a huge, huge plus. That leaves us with the Chicago Bears. And I didn't pick anybody on this list. I picked newly fired Brian Flores for the Chicago Bears. His defensive mind would really help excel what they have here with Chicago. Now, does this mean that the offense just continues to struggle? That would be something he really has to pay attention to here when building out his staff and his offensive coordinators. Brian Flores, I still think, is a great head coach. He just needs to go back to what worked for him a couple years ago and not get too cute. He tried to conform too much in Miami. The guy's a good head coach, and when he dedicates himself to what his philosophies are, could win some ball games here in the NFL. All right, but like I said, there's tons of moving parts, tons of moving pieces. Don't hold me to these early predictions. There's so much that can happen. Literally, the season's been over for like a day. So much can change here, but it's always fun to kind of take a look ahead. What are teams going to be looking for? So that way when we're, approaching the NFL draft or other issues in free agency, we can kind of take a look at the coaching staff, because the coaching staff plays a big part in the players that are on that roster. Can I get an amen down below in the comment section for that? But I want to make sure I threw out all these different scenarios here to let you know what was going on with all the coaching changes over the last couple hours. But if you have questions, leave them down below in the comment section. And do me a favor, if you can, hit the like button as well. We're going to continue content here all year long, multiple videos every single week, just to make sure you have everything you need to stay updated. So hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I look forward to talking to you guys later. Have a good one.